Welcome back to another live question period with me, David Krayden. Thanks for watching again. Let's boost those numbers today. Like this broadcast, give it a thumbs up. And thank you, everybody, for subscribing in huge numbers. We're well over 25,000, and it's been fantastic. And we're going to keep moving, keep building, because if you stop in this YouTube universe, you collapse. You have to keep adding numbers. You have to keep adding people. And that's what people who have been in this business, who have been doing this for quite some time, tell me. You can't stand still. You got to keep moving, or they just continue to skim subscribers off your list. People just become unsubscribed. And I was talking about this with Clayton Morris just last week. And it's amazing how YouTube will constantly go after small C conservative stations. By the way, I'm on Redacted today. I know a lot of my viewers also watch Redacted. I'm 100% behind Clayton and Natalie. I think they're wonderful people. We just love them here. And it's an honor to be on a show every week. And I'm on today to talk about something I didn't even know was happening. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you because Clayton sends me an email this morning saying, "Can you talk about this issue?" And I said, "What?" I had no idea. So, what's the issue? Should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote in Canadian elections? Yeah, it's the NDP at it again. Of course, the silent partner in the Liberal government, the de facto coalition partner of the Trudeau government. This is another means of the Trudeau government to get radical legislation passed or introduced in the House through the back door. So this is an NDP private member's bill, but watch and see if the Liberal support it. Watch and see if Trudeau whips the vote for this and says, yeah, support this. We need 16, 17-year-olds to vote for Liberal, to vote for me. Funny thing is, the last poll I saw revealed that Gen Z or Gen Z, however you want to pronounce it, is one of Justin Trudeau's worst voting blocks, lowest numbers possible. So, this is basically the 18 to 22, 23. I don't know what they are now, but in that the youngest age group that is now voting. They're not voting for Justin Trudeau in the next election. So does he think he's going to get 16, 17-year-old? Yeah, I think he does. Because why? Because the schools have indoctrinated all these kids in gender ideology and LGBTQ plus. They're all being indoctrinated right now. So Trudeau thinks, hey, these are people, these are kids who will vote for me. Well, come on. When you're 16, do you think you've really got some interest in who's being elected? You think you should have? When you're not paying taxes, you're not working full time, you're probably living at home, unless you're homeless. But no, you should not be voting at 16 or 17. It's ludicrous. And I couldn't believe it's just going to take a private member's bill to change it in Canada. To lower the voting age in the United States from 21 to 18, it took a constitutional amendment. And of course, we know in Canada, constitutional amendments are pretty hard to come by. Nobody wants to even try for one for like the elected Senate or to abolish the Senate. It's got to be either way because the current Senate is not functioning in the interest of Canadians, for the interest of democracy. But to change the Senate, we need a constitutional amendment. That means 7 out of 10 provinces comprising at least 50% of the population, plus the approval of the House of Commons and the Senate. So the Senate has to essentially approve itself being democratized or abolished. Don't think it's going to happen very soon. However, so we can actually change the voting age down to 16 with just a private member's bill. This is outrageous. However, stay tuned. And like I say, I'm talking about this on Redacted. So I don't want to waste too much time talking about it right now. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We are up to the challenge of combating Justin Trudeau and his attack on free speech, his war on free speech, his war on democracy, his war on everything that we hold dear about Canada. Think while it's still legal. That's one of the shirts we offer in the store. Have a look at the store. Get some t-shirts, get some hoodies for your friends and family. Go out there and say you're going to resolve to resist. Get a magnet, put it on your fridge, on your filing cabinet, and say you're going to stand on guard for Canada like that Krayden guy is. Uh-oh. Numbers, YouTube suppressing me. So please like the station right now. I see the numbers are going down, down, down. And that's because YouTube suppression is in action right now. I'm not putting up with YouTube suppression any more than I'm putting up with Trudeau's censorship. Thanks for watching. Let's go to question period now. The members are still doing their member statements, and I will be commenting as required.
Away stand against these vital supports for seniors. The Canadian Dental Care Plan is a significant achievement by our federal government. Not only will it alleviate major financial barriers and burdens, but it'll also improve the quality of life for many Canadians. As the initiative continues to roll out in phases, our plan will help improve dental health not only for the seniors in my constituency, but for seniors in communities across Canada. Thank you, Mr.
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Big airlines are raking in billions of dollars of profits off the back of unpaid work. In Canada, flight attendants who are disproportionately women work an average of 35 hours for free every month. There is no reason big airlines who make huge profits should be making their staff work for free. Yet the Liberals have allowed big airlines to take advantage of workers. Today, flight attendants are in Ottawa fighting for their right to be paid for the work they do. They want this government to change the laws and correct this unacceptable status quo and ensure that when flight attendants are at work in uniform performing their duties, they're being paid. It's only fair. New Democrats agree. This government must stand up to corporate greed and protect workers. Flight attendants deserve better, and today I raise their voices here in the House of Commons by saying unpaid work won't fly.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The hell? Why is everything frozen?
The honourable member for Beauport.
Oh, it's just the speaker having a flustered moment as usual.
Mr. Speaker, Caillouche, our Acadian giant of country, died yesterday at 76 after suffering from cancer. His real name was Reginald Charles Gagnon. His life was very full and he had an exceptional career. Far from the limelight at times, he built a very loyal audience with his tall tales and sad love ballads. He was somewhere between Willie Nelson and Willie Lamotte, although some might say that they were more like Caillouche.
Oh, get out of here.
Carrying his guitar, he played all over the place, in small towns and on big festival stages. He was inimitable, with songs like La chaîne de mon tracteur, Le frigidaire de mon chum, Mon bicycle, ma musique, and C'est ça mon Acadie. He was one of the most successful Acadian artists. He sold more than 100,000 albums. Our sincere condolences to his family, his loved ones, and his fans. We will join with our Acadian friends and hope that he's welcomed into heaven with a nice cold Alpine beer. Thank you.
These blockheads are really crazy people. You know, they're really crazy.
The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands.
I promise you we're getting to the questions here.
Here they come, and there they go. The race to replace this prime minister is underway, and Mark Carbon Tax Carney is out ahead of the pack. He's been seen jet-setting across the globe, sliding into ballrooms, sipping on champagne, eating caviar, and trying to win favor with global liberal elites. And all the while, hardworking Canadians are struggling to afford to pay their rent and buy groceries. The Finance Committee has called for Mark Carney to come and answer questions. So will he have the guts to appear, or will he keep campaigning from his private jet? Canadians need to know just how much carbon tax Carney will jack up this prime minister's carbon tax, and if there's even $1 of inflationary spending that he'd do away with. But the reality is that he's never met a hard-working Canadian's tax dollar that he isn't prepared to take away from them and isn't prepared to do away with 1 cent of Liberal waste. Carney will do anything to make a buck. He's after Canadians. Will he come to committee and finally testify to answer questions?
The honourable member from Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker. On August the 9th, 2012, Canada's women's soccer team played France for Olympic bronze in London. In the dying seconds of the game, Oakville's own Diana Matheson scored the winning goal, a goal that changed the trajectory of soccer in Canada and inspired a whole generation of young Canadian female soccer players like Sophia Stevens from my office. Matheson and Team Canada would go on to win Olympic bronze in 2016 in Rio. She's more than just a Canadian Olympic hero. She's a trailblazer and an extraordinary leader. Canada is the only top 10 women's team in the world without its own professional women's league. In 2022, Matheson launched Project 8 to change that, with the goal of creating a league that would see Canada.
Oh, should that women's league include biological men? Because your party and your government thinks it should. Look at these hypocrites standing up talking about women in sports, and they got a gutless prime minister who wants men to compete against women in sports. What a joke. No, it's just sit down, you're a joke.
Oral questions. Questions orales.
Here we go.
Member from Regina Capel.
No apologies today.
This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, and Canadians are suffering through his inflation and high interest rates. For many families, the best hope for a summer vacation will be a modest road trip. Parents will sketch out a budget based on meals and hotels, and a big expense will be fuel. The GST, excise tax, and carbon tax have helped push fuel prices to near record levels, with many families unable to afford a vacation at all. Conservatives have proposed taking the tax off of gas and diesel for the summer, saving Canadians 35 cents a litre. Will the Prime Minister vote for our motion, or will he force more Canadians to stay home this summer?
Is that all they can talk about is this summer break from carbon tax?
Mr. Speaker, this is a prime cut of conservative
Hey, it's Disco Steve.
And I know what I'm talking about. My dad was a butcher, Mr. Speaker. The savings that the Conservative Party of Canada claims for Albertans is based on people traveling 37,000 kilometers during their holidays, Mr. Speaker. 37,000 kilometers. You can go from the North Pole to the South Pole, and you would have kilometers left to achieve the savings that they claim, Mr. Speaker.
What the hell is this moron talking about? See, cue ball's back in his seat next to him.
Member from Regina Capel.
Mr. Corruption.
That's just not true, Mr. Speaker. And everybody knows that the carbon tax costs more than the rebate. That is why the Prime Minister was humiliated into granting a carve-out for just some people in some parts of the country. And that's all we're asking for today, a carve-out on federal taxes on fuel and diesel for the summer. For the average family in Ontario, that would mean almost $600 in savings. Now, to the Prime Minister and his wealthy friends, that might not seem like a lot of money, but to struggling Canadians, that could make the difference to be able to say yes to the kids when they ask for some summertime fun. So will the Prime Minister have an ounce of compassion and help more Canadian families afford a vacation?
The terrible truth is $600 won't buy you 3 nights in a hotel these days.
Mr. Speaker, I know
It is outrageous.
of the Conservative Party of Canada. Let me walk them through it. By their math.
Look at cue ball laughing away, you corrupt Boissonneau.
293 liters of gasoline over a 3-month period, Mr. Speaker.
Get rid of them both.
An average of 8.9 liters per 100 kilometers.
What the hell is he talking about?
37,000 kilometers. You would have to drive for 10 consecutive days, nonstop, Mr. Speaker. If you had 2 weeks vacation, you would have 2 days left, or maybe 3, to enjoy your vacation.
Is that what this incompetent minister's incompetent staff were working on for the past 2 days? He finally makes an appearance, Disco Steve, and this is what I don't even know what he's talking about. It's so arcane. Order.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
I don't
don't think math is the forte of someone who brags that he doesn't think about monetary policy and thinks that budgets balance themselves, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the reason why the Prime Minister is being so cruel about this issue is because he's long forgotten the thrill of the family road trip. You see, he has wealthy lobbyists who invite him to their private islands where he doesn't have to pay for the villas and he gets to stick taxpayers with the bill. But Canadian workers have to pay for all the inflation, all the interest rates, and all the tax hikes themselves. So will he have an ounce of compassion, take fuel taxes off for the summer so Canadians can have a road trip this year?
Now, this is actually probably worth saving as a post on X today. But
ask all honorable members,
where the hell is
please, to not
Paula?
take the floor unless they're recognized by the speaker, so that all members and so the public at home can listen and hear the question and also hear the answer. The Honorable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think Canadians' idea of summertime fun is being locked in a car for 10 straight days. I think
Where did they come up with this BS?
Also isn't having their dental care taken away or taking away their diabetes medication, or that their summertime fun is
Summertime fun is having euthanasia, according to this guy.
Of summertime fun. I think maybe
Look at
we
this
should have
buffoon.
a conversation with kids about what they want to do with their summer. I think they care more about getting
How about
dental care
having
and having
me?
good teeth than being locked in a car.
That's what
for
this
10 straight
moron
days.
would wish on Canadian kids next. They're going to be next, eh? Mentally ill on the list, then it's going to be kids. In fact, they already are. Some kids are already on the list of me. This guy is a goddamn moron, and he shouldn't be a minister of anything. All he is a minister of death.
I would like to
He
ask
is a
all
disgrace
members in this House
to Canada
to perhaps remain silent, including ministers and parliamentary secretaries. The honourable member for Mégantic-Clérable. After 9 years, this Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, is simply not worth the cost of $500 billion of inflationary spending that has forced parents to skip meals to be able to feed their children. Whilst the leader of the Bloc Québécois and several of his MPs are campaigning to radically increase taxes on gas, Quebecers in various regions are paying the cost because they don't have access to transit. That's what one could call being completely out of touch. Will the Liberal Bloc put their ideological agenda on hold, at least for the summer, and vote for a motion to suspend the federal gas tax for the summer? The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The calculations and economies put forward by the Conservative Party is completely ridiculous. An Albertan family, for example, would have to drive 37,000 kilometers during their vacation. So you could leave from Montreal and go to Mexico City and come back to Montreal, go back to Mexico City, come back to Montreal, go back to Mexico City, and come back to Montreal, go back to Mexico City, and you'd still have kilometers to spare.
This guy is out of his mind. Guilbeault is representative of the insane Trudeau government right now. These people can't think. They come up with these stupid answers that have absolutely no
the honourable member from
common sense.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know where they do their calculations, but they seem to be pulling numbers out of thin air, as usual. We know full well on our side that Quebecers that have to fill up their car every week will see a change in their bill at the end of the month. That is the truth. Quebecers who are paying too much for groceries, who are paying too much for their rent, and who can't make ends meet, who have to go to food banks, Mr. Speaker, they understand liberal mathematics because these mathematics take money from their pockets. Will they suspend the tax?
Really bizarre arithmetic going on today.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I haven't seen Guilbeault up so much in weeks.
Forte of the Conservative Party of Canada, so I would like to help them. To try to benefit from the economies put forth by the Conservatives, a family would have to expend 3,296 litres of gas over 3 months. So at 8.9 litres per 100 kilometres.
What is this moron talking about?
Driving 37,000 kilometers, you go from the Pole North, from the North Pole to the South
and
Pole.
look at Randy Boissonneau laughing hysterically next to him
a few months.
When the guy should be
rubbish,
up on.
Mr. Speaker.
Shall I say charges? What a bunch of witless wonders comprise the front bench of this
Order.
Liberal government. Oh, this is maddening today. Just maddening to watch so many idiots.
And then there was light, Mr. Speaker. The Outaouais Liberals have just revealed that there is a crisis in the healthcare system. They've written to Quebec City to ask for more money for healthcare. Where were these visionaries when Quebec City was warning of a $28 billion annual shortfall? Where were they when the Prime...
Yeah, no, Keith Allenbrook, your comment here is exactly what I'm thinking as well. It's like Guilbeault had disappeared for weeks because he had been saying so many stupid things. Yeah, this is Disco Steve Guilbeault, the extra from Saturday Night Live, the guy who walks around in his pink jacket looking like he's ready for happy hour. What the hell is he talking about today? They've unleashed another maniac on Canada. You have to drive 37,000 kilometers to benefit from lifting the excise tax on so-called carbon. How come how come the Liberals had a vacation, had a holiday, had a carbon tax holiday for Atlantic Canada, and they didn't have to drive 37,000 kilometers to take advantage of that? So what the hell is this moron talking about? Are you sick of this as much as I am? These people getting away with this? It is absolute trash. Anyway, get back to your comments here, because I am just beside myself listening to these idiots today. And Guilbeault is the biggest idiot on the front bench next to Justin Trudeau. I am gonna crucify him with a story on this. Guilbeault suggests you have to drive $37,000 to benefit from any reduction in the carbon tax. And that's what he's saying, which is absolutely not just stupid, but it's a blatant lie.
Everything that we are trying to do for dental care and dentistry in the Outaouais region, if one takes the ratio put forward by the Bloc Québécois, and if we compare it to other regions in Quebec, we'll see that the Outaouais region is underfunded by Quebec with regards to the number of nurses.
Here they go again, complaining about the Outaouais region.
Hospital beds.
Not enough French being spoken in the Outaouais region.
For action in healthcare.
These people live on Mars too.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker,
I know there was no sound. I was talking. It's back on now.
That is the reason for which there are ever more homeless people on the streets of Montreal. We need social and affordable housing, but under the Liberals, homelessness across the country has only increased.
All you missed was the blockheads talking, so don't worry about it.
The Conservatives lost 800,000 affordable housing units when they were in power, and the Liberals have lost another 370,000. What good are Liberal MPs in Montreal when they can't even put a roof over the heads of Montrealers? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. There's one thing upon which I agree, is that on this side of the House, and I include him, is that we truly believe that a government has to work to help homelessness.
Did you hear that? She said, I include him on this side of the House.
Which is not
because the NDP are a de facto coalition partner, but they're too stupid under Jughead Singh to even get a cabinet post. They've sold their souls to the Liberal government, but they don't even get a cabinet post out of it. These people are so incredibly immoral, unethical, but they're also
women with
stupid.
Disabilities are more likely to visit the emergency room during pregnancy because reproductive care is not accessible.
Yeah, okay.
It's impacting their mental health during pregnancy and postpartum. People with disabilities have had enough of the Liberals' half measures. They're all talk, no action. Just like their Canada Disability benefit that is nowhere near enough to live on. What is the government going to do to address these unacceptable barriers to care for pregnant women with disabilities?
Well, get Jugmeat to work it out with
The Honourable
Justin
Minister of Health.
because they're in this
Thank you, Mr.
government
Speaker.
together.
In every province and every territory,
Look at
we've
this
signed
buffoon with
agreements
the
to
red
improve
bow
healthcare
tie.
in this country, and that absolutely
It looks like a
includes
waiter
care
at
for
a
persons with
restaurant
disability.
that's trying
And
to look like it's an
specifically on
upscale
sexual and
establishment.
reproductive health, we're making sure that we're there for women with the sexual and reproductive assistance that they need, making sure they have
And the death
contraception
assistance
they
too.
need
Yeah, you've
to have
got that,
control
don't you?
over their sexual and reproductive lives and their
What the
futures.
hell
So
does that mean?
absolutely, we're going to continue to work with provinces and territories to increase access.
You're going to
and
keep
resist
shoving
the cuts
abortion down
and
our
the
throat. That's
reductions
what
the
that means.
Conservatives want to bring.
There's no such thing as reproductive right,
The
Baldy.
Honourable Member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
After
With
9
your
years,
little
this
red
Silver
bow
NDP
tie.
Prime Minister is not worth the hunger or homelessness as 1 in 4 Canadians skip meals. Edith is a single mom in my community that can't afford to feed her kids because this Prime Minister doubled groceries and gas. And his bright idea, he jacked up the carbon tax 23%. Common sense Conservatives are calling on him to axe all federal fuel taxes this summer to save average families $670. Will he vote with us, or does he want more families like Edith's to go hungry and broke?
He wants
The
more
Honourable Minister
conservative
of the
supporters to go
Environment and
hungry and
Climate
broke. No
Change.
question.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I need to go through the math again to make sure
Oh,
that
don't.
it is understood.
You
The
crazy
savings that
buffoon.
the Conservative Party is claiming, based on that assertion, is based on the use of gasoline over the summertime of 3,293 liters of gasoline. Do the math. It's not complicated. At an average consumption of 8.9 liters per 100 kilometers, a family in Alberta would have to drive 37 kilometers to be able to benefit for those claimed savings, Mr. Speaker. This has nothing to do with reality. It would be nice for the Conservative Party of Canada to come down to earth and leave La La Land for a little while.
This guy couldn't
Well, Liberal
teach
math for
a
that
kindergarten
anti-Alberta
class.
minister says that jacking up the carbon tax 20% is somehow going to fix forest fires and reduce the.
I'm going to just ask the Honourable Member, start from the top.
We are being, this country is run by a crop of madmen who couldn't figure out what they want for lunch. These people are incredibly inept, incredibly stupid.
Jacking up the carbon tax 23% is going to somehow magically fix forest fires and reduce the cost of groceries like that Edith can't afford. And they think we're gullible and incompetent like the NDP, that we'd blindly support policies that made 2 million Canadians go into a food bank in a single month and that made 1 in 4 Canadians skip meals. Why don't they do everyone a favor? Give Canadians a break and put them out and finally end their misery. Call a carbon tax election so common sense Conservatives can scrap the carbon tax scam and Canadians can kick this costly carbon tax coalition to the curb.
Don't repeat the 37,000 kilometer lesson again. This guy is just so out to lunch. It's incredible.
Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
There they go again, Mr. Speaker. They
There
want
they
to
go
ruin
again.
a rebate for Canadians. A rebate that disproportionately impacts the middle class and lower income Canadians working hard to join the middle class. I also noticed, Mr. Speaker, that throughout the past few weeks, they've been quoting from reports from Food Banks Canada, from Salvation Army, and those reports are important. We thank those organizations for those reports. What they point out are challenges faced by Canadians. In those recommendations, which they ignore, they point to
Is poverty a challenge that you
this
don't?
government has continued to support the Canada Child Benefit, for example, that they've voted against.
I don't have enough money in the bank to go on a summer vacation because of you dope. And I'm sure most of my viewers don't.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal government is not worth the hunger and homelessness that it's causing so many Canadians across this country. Many Canadians just simply look forward to a small summer vacation, a road trip perhaps. It's normally a time where they can go and camp in the mountains or go to a national park or visit loved ones. But this year, many Canadians can't afford this simple delight because this government has made life too expensive. On Monday, this House will have the opportunity to vote on a common sense motion to save Canadians 35 cents per litre on gas. Will the Prime Minister vote with us, the common sense Conservatives, so that Canadians can afford a simple vacation, or will he force them to stay home?
Are we going to hear about why the national parks
Mr. Speaker, good news,
are
kids.
letting in migrants
You can
for
take
nothing?
A summer fun time vacation where you're
Oh,
locked
yes.
in the car for 10 consecutive days.
To repeat the
nonstop
same
with no
answer.
bathroom breaks. And the Conservatives have a plan for you to have that summertime fun. And the cost? Give up the future of the planet.
Oh, get out of here, you moron. The future of the planet?
Don't worry about taking action on the planet. Enjoy your 10 hours in the car
Live in a cave, you moron, and then we won't have any influence on the future of the planet. How stupid are these people? I am so sick of listening to them. I tell you, they're just idiots. They're beyond reason. They haven't got a single rational thought in their little head. There's nothing going on in their head except talking points. And these people are just beyond bluster. They are just spewing out lie after lie after lie.
You would think it's Wednesday. The honourable member from Lethbridge.
Well, this out-of-touch prime minister might be able to take a $230,000 taxpayer-funded vacation to some fancy island, but that's not an option for most Canadians. In fact, most Canadians just simply want to be able to get in a car and drive a few kilometers to enjoy a national park or the mountains for the day. But that's even out of reach for so many of them because of this Liberal government's out-of-touch policies that are driving up the cost of everything. On Monday, this House will have the opportunity to vote on a very common sense motion that would take the federal tax off of fuel. It would make life affordable for Canadians and allow them to enjoy their summer. Will the Prime Minister vote with us so that Canadians can afford a simple road trip, or will he force them to stay at home?
You know, I say again, nothing about how national parks are allowing in migrant and so-called new arrivals to Canada for nothing. But Canadians, citizens have to pay.
Broke down and didn't quite supply them with the right math, and they do rely heavily on that for mathematics. I do note that that member fights against a regime that sends 8 out of 10 Albertans more money than they pay in. But she was a little sheepish, a little quiet, when her own premier, Danielle Smith, hiked gas taxes 13 cents to fuel, increased government spending in Alberta. She didn't talk about that. I wonder why.
The honourable member
what a
from
pathetic excuse for a House
After
leader.
9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians know this Liberal Prime Minister, he's not worth the homelessness, he's not worth the hunger, and he's not worth the tent cities that are propping up everywhere. But there is a plan to give some relief. A Conservative motion will take the carbon tax and all federal taxes off gas from now until Labor Day. It will save 35 cents a litre and maybe give Canadians a road trip. The only road trip these Liberal know are their ministers driving around in their limousines with their chauffeurs. Will they support the motion to axe the tax, yes or no?
I kept this comment up happy-go-lucky because this says it all. We are paying for Trudeau's vacations and these bastards to go on their vacations. But we can't afford to go on our vacation. And this really is
all they have are slogans,
indicating
Speaker,
the destruction of a country.
In the House of Commons yesterday, every single party in this House, minus the Conservatives, voted against their initiative because it would tax home building, Mr. Speaker, and it says nothing about homelessness. Finally, Mr. Speaker, most of their caucus is made up of rural members. Do they know that that housing plan only applies to a certain number of cities, not to the entire country, Mr. Speaker?
The honourable member from Dufferin-Caledon.
It's unbelievable. This would save 35 cents a litre in gasoline. Now, it doesn't mean much to ministers who get driven around by chauffeurs in their limos who probably haven't pumped gas and know the cost of gas in about 10 years. But for the average Canadian family, it will mean everything. And they could actually do something about it. I know they don't take road trips, but actual Canadian families do, and it will make a difference. And they've got a choice.
Yeah, and stop talking about driving 57,000 kilometers. Oh, these people are idiots.
So they can take a road trip, or they continue to punish Canadians with this damn carbon tax.
Damn carbon tax.
I was going to ask members to be very careful about the use of language in the House. The
Oh, shut
Minister
up.
for Families and
You
Economic Development.
piss poor excuse. I'll have a scotch and soda, dinner.
So let's talk about a few of those numbers. 4, the number of consecutive months that we've seen inflation decrease.
Can you
in
add,
this
Jenna?
country.
I'm surprised.
750,000, the number of families benefiting from our affordable early learning and childcare. 1.3 million, the number of Canadians that have been lifted out of poverty with our policies. 400,000, the number of kids that will receive access to food at school. This is what our government is doing.
30 million, the number of Canadians who are tethered to the Liberal government and can't live their own lives without you. So sick of this authoritarian control.
Mr. Speaker, the French language commissioner has
All
been
right,
very
blockheads in the way here.
Quebec is incapable of franchising a large number of immigrants. Despite investing hundreds of millions of dollars, there are 642,000 people in Quebec today who still don't speak French. Only 70,000 of them have been able to take a franchisation course, which is a record, but which is still far from enough. When will the federal government finally going to share out the reception of asylum seekers and reduce temporary immigration in collaboration with the government of Quebec? The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is exactly what we are doing. We are working hand in hand with Minister Fréchette and other provincial ministers. The member across the way seems to forget that La Loi 101 exists and has existed for a while. We, since 2015, have sent $5.2 billion to Quebec without asking for accountability for franchisation. If Quebec needs more Francophone immigrants, we're here to help them. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. The Loi 101 that they do not respect themselves, Mr. Speaker. In any case, the French language commissioner has been clear. At the moment, 20,000 people a month enter Quebec and need francisation. Only 8,000 of them register with Francisation Québec. Francisation Québec can't maintain current levels. They can't work with these current levels of immigration, and so we can't maintain these levels without weakening the French language in Quebec. That's a purely mathematical finding of the French language commissioner. Will the federal government finally respect Quebec's capacity in receiving immigrants? The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, once again, the member across the way seems to be asking the question under the wrong jurisdiction. Under the Canada-Quebec agreement, Quebec has most choosing powers when it comes to Francophone immigrants. They have the power and the capacity, and with $5.2 billion since 2015, they also have the financial capacity to do all of this without accountability. It's Quebecers who will have to ask answers of their government. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. That's not an easy answer, Mr. Speaker. The ability to fund everything is a key element in our ability to welcome newcomers, but it's hard to ask people to learn French when they can't feed themselves in the first place. In Drummondville alone, the food bank has recorded a 97% increase in needs this year. And so it's had to turn people away. This increase is also
they're still obsessed. The Bloc cannot talk about anything else except people learning French.
Organization that, and I quote, they didn't think
why don't you just get the hell out of the House of Commons and do your own thing in Quebec and stop bothering the rest of us?
To causing a humanitarian crisis, Mr. Speaker.
Because they are a waste of space.
Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. The member will once again blame immigrants for the increase in grocery prices. We must be reasonable, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, Canada will play a role, and that's why we are working hand in hand with Quebec to spread asylum seekers. There's work to be done on various jurisdictions. I'm looking forward to doing so with Madame Fréchette.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, and Canadians are fleeing Canada, moving south in record numbers.
Finally, a relevant question.
The highest number in 10 years. Escaping this Prime Minister's economic ruin. Fleeing so they can afford to live, afford to buy a home, and stop paying for this government's bloat. This is an inconvenient truth from the Prime Minister's very own media machine, the CBC, this morning. So how many more Canadians have to leave their country before the Prime Minister realizes that his government is just not worth the cost?
Just expand the vote to 16-year-olds, and then we'll be okay, Justin Trudeau thinks.
I wondered when they continually put down our country who they want us to be and what they want to emulate. Now we know that they prefer to have a United States model, for example, of healthcare. Well, I can tell you, I was down south a couple of months ago.
What the hell are you talking about?
Where an individual fell over, and when they came conscious after I called 911, their concern wasn't their health. Their concern was money. That they didn't have the money for the care. I don't want to live in that country. And on this side, we will fight for public health care.
How about health care in this country? It's useless. You got cancer, you get sent to your MAID program. Oh, this guy, what a joke. Nobody even mentioned healthcare. He brings up healthcare. Healthcare is a weak
Plan is
argument.
actually driving Canadians out of this country in droves. More than 126,000 Canadians left to go stateside in 2022. That's a 71% increase from the year before. Doctors, nurses, mechanics, young Canadians with university degrees, don't they get why they're leaving? His policies, the Prime Minister's policies, are hurting them. When will the Prime Minister realize the Canadians are just not that into him?
And this idiot, stand up again and say how great Canadian healthcare is. You need cancer. You need a cancer operation. You're going to die.
Chose to come to Canada from places that were difficult, where there were challenges. Canadians
What
are
the?
proud of
Who
the
the
country
hell
that
is
we
this?
have. Conservatives keep talking this country down.
Talib
There are people around
Nur
the world,
Mohammed.
Mr. Speaker, that would choose to come to this country, that are choosing to come to this country every single day for freedom, for the capacity
Yeah,
to be
so
who
they can get
are,
free
to love who
everything.
they love, to be proud of their traditions, and to be able to do it in this country. We have
What a
healthcare, we have
joke.
the things that
Just
Canadians
sit
and
down,
all
put
those
a
around
bag
the world
over
are
your head.
desperately
You are a
seeking.
joke.
We will keep fighting for that on this side of the house while they keep talking this country down.
I'm gonna talk this country down because it is a complete country in retreat under Justin Trudeau.
Dundas, South Glengarry.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians know just how unaffordable life has become, and the facts speak for themselves. They are so glaringly obvious, even the CBC of all places is covering the record surge of Canadians moving to the United States. 126,000 Canadians moved to the U.S. in 2022 alone, a 70% increase in the last decade. There are
Wow.
Facebook groups, some as big as 55,000 each, that are finding ways and sharing tips on how to move out of Canada. If things are so great, why are a record number of Canadians moving to the United States then?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Now they're going to pass it to this. What the hell? They just keep passing the ball.
in that country are going through a lack of access to reproductive choice.
Oh,
Mr. Speaker.
fuck
I read an
off.
article in the New York Times.
This has got something to do with
yesterday, Mr.
abortion
Speaker,
now?
about the number of women that are dying
You are
because
a
they can't
gross
access
excuse
abortion care
for a public
in their
servant.
states, Mr. Speaker.
Put a bag
That's the
over your
kind of
head,
future
too.
that these conservatives want for Canadian women, and we'll fight for their freedom.
No, get off the stage. Get off the stage. You're a failure as a human being. You're a failure as a cabinet minister. You're a failure as an MP.
Mr. Speaker, every year,
What a
hundreds
joke.
of festivals light up communities across Canada. In Edmonton, the internationally renowned Fringe Festival supports thousands of artists, volunteers, and visitors, generating $16 million in economic benefits.
I couldn't
Despite
believe that
this,
one.
the Fringe and other festivals have had their federal funding significantly cut. This is devastating for our festivals and for our communities. These are already promised funding agreements. Why is the government cutting funding that is hurting Canadian arts and culture?
Here, here. What a bunch of morons.
The Honourable Minister of Heritage.
All right. I don't want to
I'd
hear
like to
this
thank my
minister
colleague
Perry.
for-
So you see what's happening here, folks. We have a question about why are so many Canadians leaving Canada for the U.S. So what does the Liberal government do? They put up three different people. One talks about healthcare being so much better in Canada, although people are going to the U.S. in droves to get healthcare because you're going to die in this country if you need a serious operation, or you'll be referred to MAID. And then they go to the other extreme. They bring up a minister to talk about abortion. Like this has anything to do with abortion? Yeah, you can still get abortion in the United States. But these people are desperate and they're stupid and they just constantly throw it in your face. And I am sick to death of them. We are going to come down hard on this Liberal government for their lies, their chronic mendacity, their chronic BS that just comes through every day. Oh, here's another starving New Democrat telling you about how hard they're working
proposal
for
to
Canadians.
tackle this crisis and save lives.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I've never seen a more pathetic question period in my life, and I've seen them all.
The Toronto public health request because it didn't adequately protect public health and maintain public safety.
We follow science. We listen to families, doctors, and people with living experience because we know what works. A full continuum of support from prevention and harm reduction to treatment. The only person the member for is listening is to, sorry, that's it.
The honourable member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you. If you believe in something,
Get off
defend
my
it.
station.
Our government firmly believes in a woman's right to choose, which is why we are unwavering in our defense of abortion rights in Parliament and in our communities. Conservative caucus members demonize abortion and would rather ban it from Canada. The leader of the opposition outright refuses to defend abortion. Why is he so silent? Canadians have a right to know where their leaders stand on abortion. Can the Minister of Justice please let us know the government's position?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, on this day in 1990, members of Parliament passed a Conservative bill that
Let's
would
see how
sentence
bad the
doctors
ball
to
spot's
jail
getting.
for providing abortions. Thankfully, that bill died in the Senate. Abortion is healthcare, Mr. Speaker. Canadian women should always
No,
have
abortion is
access
not
to
health
abortion.
care. It's
Recognizing
barbarism.
this constitutional right to abortion, Liberal Bill C-75 removed abortion from our criminal code entirely in 2019. That's the exact same bill the Conservative leader keeps promising to repeal. While Conservatives speak at anti-abortion rallies, venerate American restrictions on abortion, this Liberal government will always stand up for women's rights.
It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Charter of Rights. You are a moron for suggesting it is.
The honourable member for Levis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, and where the mayor of Montreal was elected, there are 540-day delays in obtaining housing permits. It costs more to build units. This is what you call incompetency. This Liberal bloc government doesn't require anything from cities to step up housing development. Why is the Prime Minister refusing common sense and promoting the incompetency of the mayors that are supporting him? The Honourable Minister. In math class today, we look at basic competence. There's a whole idea of size. 1 is smaller than 10, and so 6 is smaller than thousands. One plan is much bigger than 0 plans. And what do they want to do? Just cut infrastructure and just insult mayors, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't build any housing.
You're not building any lasting housing either. All you're doing is building ghettos.
Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of this government, it's not worth it. The CMHC has stated that Canada needs 5.8 million units to restore housing affordability. This Liberal bloc government is building less housing than in the 1970s. It's a real scandal. Mr. Speaker, Conservative legislation to build housing, not red tape, is a common sense solution. Why is this Prime Minister protecting the incompetence of Liberal mayors instead of building housing? The Honourable Minister. Once again, in terms of math, he has some lessons to learn. 0 is much smaller than 179 agreements across the countries with municipalities. 200,000 is smaller than 240,000,
Keith.
and 0 housing
Abortion
units
is not health
still
care.
0.
And I say that every day.
That's their plan. 0.
There's no
doesn't work.
such thing as reproductive right or health care. This is a procedure that kills an unborn child. Let's call it
years of
that.
this Prime Minister, Quebecers are paying the cost of this housing crisis. In Ville-Marie, under the mayor, it takes 540 days to obtain a building permit. Imagine this. 540 days in the midst of a housing crisis. This is what you call incompetency. Quebecers are suffering, and the Bloc is voting for $500 billion in appropriations and against common sense solutions in this crisis. Can this Liberal Bloc government step up to the plate and promote housing construction in Montreal and across Quebec once and for all? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we're talking about math today, so there's a very small figure that is so easy to forget because it's so small. It's 6 affordable housing units, 6 units that the Conservative leader, former minister, when he was minister across the country and throughout his entire term, only 6 units. Where in the riding of my colleague who just spoke, there's 134 affordable housing units that have been built with the support of the Canadian government. And yet their leader continues to insult municipalities in Quebec. The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lille, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker,
Who cares
it's more
about
than
what?
6 or 9 years under this Prime Minister, and more Quebecers are living on the streets because of the lack of affordable housing across Canada. This Liberal Bloc government has doubled the cost of rent. Imagine in Montreal, it takes 2 years to get a building permit, and that's when things go well. The incompetence is
Good
blatant.
point, Claire. Yeah,
Quebecers
abortion
need
is
solutions,
healthcare if you
but the
believe
Bloc voted
in
against the
reducing the
Conservative
world's
leader's plan for
population.
affordable
Exactly.
housing. Can this Bloc Liberal government, for once in its life, help people across Canada to help them build housing? Thank you.
Well, the object of this every day is to have a lively discussion about
The Honourable
question period.
Minister.
Otherwise, we just listen to idiots.
Inaudible.
And sometimes the
They like
opposition is no
talking
better
about
than the
common
government.
sense, but when you build a
But
house,
we
Mr.
need
Speaker,
to make
you
this
make
an
sure that basic
experience
things
that we
such
can
as
actually
infrastructure, water,
benefit from. And
electricity,
that's what I try to do here every day.
sidewalks,
So
streets
thank you,
are all in place. And all
everybody.
they want to cut
I had some really nasty
is
comments from
infrastructure for
trolls today.
municipalities to build
And
homes.
that means
So
you're
once again,
actually
a plan,
hitting the
one plan,
audience.
3 million housing units versus zero units. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Don't forget the North, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last March, Quebec's Minister of Justice informed us that 109 stays of proceedings for unreasonable delays were granted last year alone in Quebec. 109. How can you expect people to have confidence in the justice system when justice no longer takes its course? We've been sounding the alarm for years about this government's nonchalance in appointing judges. There's still a shortfall of nearly 60 judges, and it's a recurring problem. Does the minister find it acceptable that trials are aborted because he hasn't taken the time to appoint judges? The Honourable Minister
Women's
of
rights
Justice
is abortion.
and Attorney General. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I won't accept
this is nothing to do with rights.
The colleague. I appointed justices.
Thank you.
As quickly as possible, the quickest in Canadian history, 113 appointments over the past 10 months. Nevertheless, there is always more to do. We are doing this. In terms of delays for criminal justice, we have established $700 million for legal assistance to help speed up trials. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc is obviously in favour of bringing accused persons to trial within a reasonable time frame. But when people accused of murder or other crimes against people escape justice because our courts are overflowing, that's when they lose our support. Putting violent, dangerous people back on the street because at the end of the day, we don't have enough judges. This has serious consequences for public safety and in people's confidence in the justice system. Will the ministers support our bill so that people accused of violent crimes are not simply released because there's no time to judge them? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I didn't call you a troll.
Just to be clear,
you're not the
bill
troll.
Tabled today.
There was a troll, and I got rid of him right away.
The notwithstanding clause under the Canadian Constitution. They said that they would use the notwithstanding clause to trample the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Charter. Now we see another federal party.
You're trampling our rights under the Charter.
On this side of the House, for the Liberal Party, our government will always protect your rights and liberties guaranteed by the Charter.
The Liberal, on that side of the House, you will always trample over our rights.
Earlier today in Health Committee, we heard powerful testimony from Indigenous leader Earl Thiessen, Executive Director of Oxford House, who said safe supply is akin to pharmaceutical colonialization. Will the Prime Minister listen to Indigenous leaders like Earl and put an immediate end to this dangerous government drug trafficking program?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, it is important to recognize that there is not one perspective on the best way forward through this toxic drug supply that is facing this country. That's why this government is focused on providing tools that meet the needs of communities. In fact, if communities are not comfortable with safe supply, then they are not using safe supply, Mr. Speaker. To allege that this approach writ large across the country would not have detrimental effects is false. And I will say this, Mr. Speaker, we on this side are focused on saving the lives of our friends' children, and we will continue to do that.
There's no such thing as a safe supply of heroin or opioids. These people are idiots to suggest there is. It's lethal. These drugs are lethal.
I think my honourable colleague has two questions, Speaker.
Honourable colleague is actually deferring to the honourable member from Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, last night the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction said the Prime Minister's deadly experiment of hard drug legalization in BC was a success. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, drug overdose deaths are up 380% in BC. The minister refused to rule out expanding the deadly drug legalization in Toronto or Montreal or anywhere else in Canada. The message is clear. The NDP Liberal government will import death, disorder, crime, chaos caused by this deadly experiment. Why won't the Prime Minister abandon his deadly hard drug policies?
Hear, hear. L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives' remarks are dangerous. They're just saying that we need to clean these people up because they bother people. No, we're trying to help drug users. They don't choose to
just give them
be
more
addicts.
drugs.
They don't wake up one morning and say, yeah, we're going to start using drugs. We have a range of options so they can find a path to move forward and solve their health problem, which is not a criminal one, but a mental health one. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Yesterday, the Minister of Mental Health doubled down and said that the deadly experience with hard drug legalization in BC was a success. For the minister, success is a 388% increase in the number of deaths related to drugs. In 2023, the Mayor of Montreal reiterated her support for legalization of hard drugs, such as heroin and crack. And will the minister, can they reassure Quebecers that they will never reproduce the experience with hard drugs in Montreal?
Before we get to the honourable parliamentary,
before we move to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, I'd like to encourage all members, particularly the member for Courtney Alberni, that he had the privilege of asking a question. And so please not speak until you're recognized by the chair. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm also at the Health Committee. And in the last meetings we had, we did hear what the colleague has just said, but we also heard people say that it takes a range of options because there's not just one way of getting people to stop taking hard drugs. We need several strategies and initiatives to ensure that everyone finds a solution. And this is what we've committed to. In terms of the exemption, there hasn't been one yet from Montreal. So if we do receive one, we will do what is necessary. Thank you.
What
the hell does that mean?
Honourable member from Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, tackling climate change, reducing emissions, and moving to a low-carbon future is a top priority for Canadians and for our Liberal government. We're implementing an aggressive climate action plan while trying to keep
It's time for the softball
Canadians.
questions.
We recently learned that the PBO has agreed to do a revised analysis on his report on the cost
is once again hiring foreign mercenaries to shoot deer on a BC island. The cost? It will cost taxpayers over $12 million to cull less than 900
Sorry about that.
invasive deer.
We had some
This while
technical
local hunters had
difficulties there.
previously removed over 2,000 of the invasive fallow deer for free. Why is the minister wasting $12 million on a deer hunt Canadian hunters said they'd do for free?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no knowledge of this issue. We will look into it and get back to the member as quickly as possible. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Mr. Speaker, we have Canadian hunters that say they would even pay to hunt these deer, yet the NDP Liberals have found a way to make it cost millions. Wow. From Scott Carpenter. It's a real slap in the face to Canadian hunters, and there's millions of us in this country who would have been more than happy to spend our own money to go in there and harvest some of the meat ourselves. To invite foreigners into the country because they felt we were incapable of doing it ourselves is insulting, to say the least. What does this NDP Liberal government have against Canadian hunters?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, we will look into it and get back to the member as fast as possible. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, it just goes to show, Mr. Speaker, if it's not climate change, they don't know anything about it. In 2015, the Prime Minister told Canadians that you don't need an AR-15 to bring down a deer. Yet he's hired foreign mercenaries with semi-automatic rifles and large capacity magazines to do just that. These NDP Liberals are spending $12 million to cull a few hundred deer on Sydney Island. The waste is typical. The hypocrisy is palpable. Why does this Prime Minister continue to demonize hunters while finding the most expensive way to do something that local hunters would have done for free?
There's a conversation which is happening between members who should take that conversation behind the curtains while the Honourable Member is speaking and the Honourable Minister is going to answer. So the Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I repeated my answer to the question twice, so now I'll reply in French. I'll get back to the member as quickly as possible. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Task Force on Preventative Health just announced their updated breast cancer screening guidelines. I am disappointed that the guidelines do not reflect concerns put forward by many Canadians. Can the Minister of Health please share his views on the task force recommendations?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share the member's concern. I was concerned and disappointed, frankly, at the recommendations that were there. They do not seem to comport to the experts that I've spoken to across the country. That's why I've asked immediately for the Chief Public Health Officer to review this independent task force decision to make sure we convene the best science and the best experts to be able to inform the decision that makes sure that every woman in this country gets the guidance they need to protect their health.
What the hell does that mean?
The Honourable Member from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are expecting this wildfire season to be devastating, and the Minister has said the same. Last summer, we had to rely on our military to help battle wildfires and support communities. This year, the
Why
Chief
don't you
of
put the
Defence
arsonist
Staff
in
says
jail?
that's no longer an option. Wow. We need a solution. Mr. Speaker, Canadians overwhelmingly want a dedicated national wildfire fighting force. So will the Liberals create this needed force to tackle fires, support communities, and save lives?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for bringing this forward. And first of all, I'd like to say to the 8 firefighters that were killed in last year's wildfire season, our hearts go out to their families. Over 200,000 Canadians were evacuated last year. The important thing is we work very closely with the municipalities, with provinces and territories who have the first line of defense when it comes to fighting wildfires, but we will always be there for them. And we are making sure that we have the proper resources in place to make sure that we are ready for this year. Thank you.
The honourable member from Saanich Gulf Islands.
Mr. Speaker, I had the great honor of participating yesterday in a symposium sponsored by Senator Mary Lou McPhedran from the other place and attended by so many brilliant young people arguing that the voting age should be 16 years old. Mr. Speaker, the Vote 16 movement includes a bunch of people over 70, like myself. Well, I'm not over 70. I'm almost 70. My point is, Mr. Speaker,
Because she's been
all
imbibing
of us,
again.
regardless of party, should get behind this. Would the Honourable Minister for Democratic Reform, for responsibility for the elections, let us know whether the government is prepared to listen to young people and put the voting age at 16?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member opposite for the question, and in particular for young people taking part in their democratic institutions. This is precisely what we want young people to do, to be engaged, and the democratic process involves Canadians all across this country at every age to take part in our democracy. PROC is studying this matter as well. We've introduced reforms to the Election Act. Mr. Speaker, we are going to continue to listen to Canadians to ensure that everybody can take part in the democratic process.
So what the hell does that mean? Are they going to support it or not?
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand there's an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of
All right, so interesting time here. You heard that response. We had the Green Party bring up the 16-year-old voting age. And what the hell was that response? They had this completely incompetent minister stand up and give a completely incomprehensible response. Yeah, we're going to support young Canadians. What does that mean? I don't know, but I think it means they might be supporting this bill because they did not say they're not going to support it. So interesting how question period today ends exactly as we introduced it, with should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote? I say no. When I was 16, I probably had the intellectual credentials to vote, but I certainly didn't have the economic ones to vote. I think you should at least be working and having some element in society, be a taxpayer, not necessarily obviously not a homeowner, but contributing to society to vote. And the Liberals are desperate. They're so desperate to find some vote harvesting here. Some people who will vote for them that they are considering 16-year-olds now. So this is crazy. And it's interesting how question period ended today. Thanks for watching, and sorry for the technical glitch there. We lost you for a minute, but we'll be back. Not tomorrow. I'm going to spend tomorrow with my nephew, who is a football player. He's out here from Calgary, and he's playing an exhibition game at our new stadium, which I haven't even looked at or seen. And I'm proud to do that tomorrow. So I won't be able to do question period tomorrow. But thank you for watching today. We love you all. God bless you all. You're wonderful.